All right, here we are today, doing something new for Spiritist Conversations. We're trying to do our first Facebook Live episode. God knows we haven't talked in a while. It is very hard to schedule the three of us, especially because I'm in a completely different time zone than those other two over there who have been very gracious and very flexible. And it's been very challenging, but we have a wonderful date that has gone by, April 18th, and we've got something to say about this. So we've got the band back together, and we're excited to be here, right? So you know the three of us already. I am Dan Assisi, I have my friend Flavio Zanetti, and my good friend Suzana Simoes here as well. I want to just say hello and say hi to you guys before we actually dive in.
Absolutely. Hey, Dan, glad to be here again. It's always a pleasure to do this thing, and even today in a more special way by doing and like really leveraging Facebook Live for our Spiritist conversations. Looking forward to it.
Hello, guys. This is so exciting. I mean, we've been doing this for a while right now, but to be able to do live like this is, it's very exciting. Let's see what we can pull together today. Hello, everybody else who is joining us as well.
Great point, Suzana. Great point. Because we are doing this new thing here on the web, it means that if folks are out there and they want to put some comments in there and be part of the show with us, they can too. So we hope that we get some interaction and see what is it that we can add here, right? So really excited. We have some friends from all over the place. Look at that. Look at that, people. We have JC from the Philippines with us today.
Yep.
Very excited. Oh. Very, very cool. Very cool. Be able to kind of hang out with our friends here. But let's go back to what we do best, right? What we do best is just really talk about things off the cuff. This is a show that is really about being unscripted, unplugged, and just having the conversations with the three of us. So we were talking about 18th of April, which is a historic date for us in Spiritism, because it was on the 18th day of April of 1853, so 166 years ago, that the Spirits book, the seminal work of Spiritism, was published in Paris, France. And although we don't have rituals, we don't really have a lot of different things in Spiritism, that's a special date for us because of that book, the book that kind of started it all. And we figured it will take some time to just talk about what the book is, what it meant and it means to all of us, some of our favorite passages or parts of the book, and anything else that we feel might be interesting. So the question to the group here is, how would you guys define the Spirits book? What would you say if folks were not familiar with it?
I think it's a life-changing book. Everybody that has had the pleasure to read it from cover to cover has a lot to say about it. It changes people's lives. It really presents a new dimension for humanity to look into things from a totally different perspective, different angle, right? That wasn't previously described or shown or taught to us by any other philosophies or religions out there. So I do believe that it is a life-changing book for a lot of people that have read it. It was for me, absolutely was for me. And people that we have a chance to talk to and folks that ended up going to our center for the first time, we recommend reading the book. And after they do so, they come back and they are usually dumbfounded by the amount of knowledge, amount of wisdom that the book brings to human life in general. So it is a life-changing book for sure.
Yeah, I think the Spirits book, the importance of the Spirits book being the very first book of the codification, it sets for us the philosophical principles that constitute Spiritism. So it is a book that is really well designed, if you will, You know, it has 4 parts. It has the introduction, it has the prolegomena, it has the body of the book, which is basically questions and answers, and ends with a conclusion. And so it's a very powerful book, because the entire Spiritist philosophy is summarized in this book that is put together in a very organized and methodical way, and touches all the very, very essential principles that can help us in our enlightenment process. So for that reason, you know, I think it's the starting, the entire Spiritist. So I kind of heard myself, so I stopped for a second. But that, you know, I totally agree with Flavio, and it's a very special book. I actually like to think of it as a piece of art, because it's so phenomenal how the book is put together. And we can talk, you know, we can talk about the introduction and all that's in it. We can talk about the prolegomena. We can talk about the questions and even the conclusion. You know, each part is very special.
You know, I love that you say that, because I never thought it as a work of art, but I think you're right. Funny enough, I kind of always went the other way a little bit, and I basically thought of it as a work of science. One of the things that has distinguished the Spirits book for me, has made it so powerful in so many different ways, is that it was not the result of just one person, right? It's not like a novel. It's not just a story that somebody sat down and wrote and sold it, right? It is the result of this scientific method of asking all these different questions with the help of different mediums at different times, and to see what kind of answers we get, and then triangulating all of that together into one, into one cogent group of theories, right? And so it's always fascinated me, because here it is. We got this book that it's more like a reference book. It's almost like a treatise in terms of the way that we're going about it. And it basically starts to open the door for us to this knowledge that we've all kind of known was there, right, spiritually. But all of a sudden we have this scientific validation that says, hey, this is not just what, you know, Flavio thinks, or what Suzana thinks, or what Dan thinks, but the amalgamation, like the joining of all these different people that came together. And because they all agreed and it made sense, it stands more to reason that it is the real thing, right? Because when we got a lot of people who were agreeing on a topic, you've had a chance to have many different people review that, think about it. So the arguments and the content there seems to be more of a sure thing, right? But at the same time, I can see how it's a beautiful thing, just like Suzana was describing. So it is a piece of art. It is a piece of science. It's a piece of scientific art or artistic science, or whatever way you wanna mention in there.
Okay. So interesting that Suzana thought this was a piece of art. Dan, you thought that this was a piece of science, and for me, it's more of the philosophical component that really helps somebody make sense of her own self and the life that one lives. So it's very interesting how, in the very different perspectives, right, we describe the Spirits book very differently from each other. Without even, by the way, folks, do you know that you're listening or watching this? This is totally unscripted. We did not prepare or plan for this discussion, so it's really off the cuff.
And really, by the way, we are talking about the same book. Just want to make that clear.
Great point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have some people chiming in as well. We have RJ Lennon here, for instance, who says that for him, it is the unity of science and spiritual world, which is hard to find in other doctrines. So I think that's a very interesting perspective there, right? And we also have our friend JC here, who chimed in before and told us that what he really likes is the unity in Spiritism's three aspects, and that is what sets it apart. So I guess the question then for the group here is, what is this aspects that JC is talking about?
I'm sorry, I missed the question. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. So JC says that the unity in Spiritism's three aspects is what really sets it apart, right? So what do we think about those three aspects? What are these three aspects that JC is talking about? What are these three different components of Spiritism that oftentimes we share and talk about? Science,
philosophy, and religion.
Religion, right?
Or, by the way, I wanted to make sure that we send our deepest hugs to our friend Kuya JC from the Philippines. It's good to see you here, Kuya. Always a pleasure to have your thoughts and comments that inspires as well. Thank you for doing that. Maraming salamat po.
Now you're just showing off.
I am. I'm just saying thank you in Tagalog, right? Really.
But I think along these lines, you know, I'm not sure who is out there on the line in terms of like knowledge of the Spirit's book, right? So I think it's important to talk about how the Spirit's book is put together in 4 different parts. And these 4 different parts will talk about these different aspects that are being brought up. So the first part talking about the primary causes, the primary causes talking about God, the formation of beings. The second part talking about the relationship between the spiritual and the corporeal world, and is a part that talks about the influence of the spirits. It gets a little bit into the mediumship aspect of Spiritism. The third part talking about the moral laws, which brings the need for our changing behavior, for transformation. In the fourth part that talks about the hopes and consolations, talks about the divine justice. So it's amazing to see in one book all these aspects combined. And you know what's really like fascinating, I mean, if you really think about it, then Kardec takes from this initial summary, which those particular parts, and he does what is actually suggested in the introduction of the Spirit's book, because in the introduction of the Spirit's book, Kardec is going to talk about the need to study the book. And the need to study, he's going to define as a series of study, being something that's doing continuously in a systematic way. And so he himself takes those 4 parts with the Spirits and studies deeper each one of those parts in the other books that will together compose the codification work. So it's the basis that he will then later with the Spirits further into the different works that we have nowadays.
And what I love about that too, is not just it's the 4 parts, but they also follow, right?
Yeah.
Philosophically, because, you know, with primary causes, that's where you start. You start with the facts. You have to have facts. You have to look for factual knowledge before we can do anything else, right? Mm-hmm. And once we have the facts, then we can move to part 2, which is the spiritual world, right? Then we begin to put ideas together and we begin to understand, oh my goodness, if we outlive our physical body, then where do we go? Oh, a spiritual world. How does that work? What's in there? And I think the third part then really comes in, which is beautiful, which is the moral consequences of stuff, right? So if there is a spiritual world and we outlive our physical body, then what does that mean? And if there is reincarnation, right? So what does that mean? Should we behave differently? Maybe we should change the way we act, right? And so the third part brings us this ethical living stuffing for us to think about. And what I really love is the fourth part, which then tells us about future hopes and solaces, right? So if we do all this and if we start thinking ethically, then what's going to happen to us? What does our future look like if we do one thing or another, right? And I think it's really cool because it's not only a book about content, about the questions, but it's a method as well. Because if we do the same method of looking for facts, then putting them together to understand the situation, to think about how to behave and project out what's going to be the consequences of our actions, I think we're going to be, as human beings, in a better place and be contributing better for the world around us, right? So there's a lot of resonance between what the content is and what the method is too, which I think is a beautiful thing, is one of my favorite parts about the Spirits book.
Yeah, interesting. You guys are mentioning the specific parts and how to get there. Susan, I was gonna get you when you start really going to God, the first part of the book, but then you came back to the introduction. And one thing that we talk a lot about it is the prolegomena in the Spirits book, which really helps us understand, right? For new things, we need really a discursive of action or introduction to a new book, to new things. This is exactly how Kardec does in prolegomena, really, trying to really come and write specific methods or procedures for us to understand a new body of knowledge, a new science, a new philosophy that is about to really coin, right, through the hands. And by the way, something that we forget to mention, right now we're here using technology and leveraging, seeing ourselves over camera, right? Kardec wrote this book after dinner every night. That was the only time he had left in his day-to-day activities, using a fountain pen with no light, no electricity, right? Just a candle light and fountain pen. That's how he wrote the entire book. So again, a lot of respect, at the same time, a lot of gratitude for the hard work that Allan Kardec put together to really bring this not only to us but to humanity in general. But back to the point, if you look at the sequence, right, of the Spirits book, they speak a lot about themselves. And I think, Dan, you started to touch on this a little bit, right? If you look at the sequence alone, the index alone, one can learn a lot from just looking into that.
Yeah. And you brought an interesting point there too, right? Because we started talking about Kardec. But who was Kardec? I think it's hard for us to talk about the Spirits book without talking about Kardec a little bit, right? And what I also find very interesting is that Allan Kardec is the pen name of a French educator, right? Hippolyte Rivel, who was already pretty established at that time in France. And so, because he was already knowledgeable and known in the times, the Spirits, who are actually the bosses of the book, as I like to call it, right? Because it's the Spirits book. It's not Kardec's book. It's not Rivel's book. The title is The Spirits Book because it's meant to show that it's not a product of one person, right? And they very, very nicely told him, hey, don't use your name. This is not your work, right? Use this other name from your previous lives so that you folks understand that this does not belong to one person, right? This is a legacy to the whole of humanity. So we are going to talk often in Spiritism about Allan Kardec because we needed a name to put in the books, right? Here in the physical world, you need an author. And you can't put hundreds of thousands of authors in one book. It just doesn't make practical sense. And so that's how we have Allan Kardec in there, which is a conversation for another time because it's an interesting piece that we can kind of
yeah.
Let me add something to what you said because I think that's something that is so unique about the Spirits book is that the Spirits book is the book of the Spirits. And it seems like I'm repeating myself here, but in Prolegomena, the Spirits will tell Kardec, it's stated over there, that after he finished the first edition, which had actually 501 questions in 1857, the Spirits did revise and correct the work that he had done. His job was just the method and the compilation and the method that he used, but the work, the content came from the Spirits. So the book was actually revised and correct. And then when the second edition came on, which was a more completed one in 1860, then again the Spirits did a revision, made corrections before it was published. So this is in the book, and it's very unique because you don't see that, anywhere else, I guess. I mean, and very unique. It's a work of many evolved, enlightened minds who came together to put this book together.
Yeah, when you say enlightened minds, I believe it's also at the bottom of the Prolegomena that we see names like John the Evangelist, St. Augustine, right? Socrates, Fenelon, Franklin, Swedenborg, Plato, and some others that have contributed to the Spirit's book. So this is definitely not a common book by all means. This is a book of art. It's a book of science. It's a new philosophy that's been there so that humankind can take the most benefits out of it. I think you said it all, Suzana. It's a book that was made by the spirits for all of us. We're also spirits, right?
Yeah, and I love what Suzana said too about the trial and error. Let me take it back. The reiteration of things, right? How Kardec went and did a second edition and a third edition, which is the one that we kind of use today, because it has to do a lot with Spiritism itself, right? It has to do about with the core of our method of how we do go about things. We investigate the world, we make sense of things, and if we find a better explanation for them, we change it, right? We keep on going and moving forward. And I think that is a really big piece of Spiritism in general that sometimes we forget. It's not set in stone, right? We say the Spiritism started with the Spirit's book, but it didn't finish or end with the Spirit's book. It always grows. It's a progressive body of knowledge. And that is really great for us to know because it's reflected in the DNA of Spiritism, right? This sense of inquiry and testing things and making sure it makes sense. Kardec himself even tested, so to say, some of the materials we're going to find in other books and this monthly publication that he had, the Spiritist Review, right? He would do essays and try things out, invite feedback from different folks. And when they worked out well, he would then feel that they're ready for prime time, so to say. And then he would add it to the books that came afterwards, right? So really beautiful stuff.
One thing that I wanted to call out that Anna Teresa mentioned here in the comments, guys, that she believed it's also important to highlight that Kardec went deeper into each part of the book by writing other books, right? Which I think it's colossal. It's huge, right? Per se, when the first part of the book, when we talks about the creation, the universe, God, and all that, right? What does he do? He goes into a lot of details after. Second part, the communication with the spirits, the medium's book, and he keeps on going. I think it's also very, very important to highlight that, and thank you, Anna, for bringing that up to us. Thank you for your participation there.
Yeah, and that touches a little bit on what Suzana was mentioning before, right?
Right.
She did something really great there, and she said, the 4 parts that we had talked about before on the Spirit's book, later on, Kardec unfolds them into separate books, right? So the primary cause of all things, the beginning, the factual knowledge of Spiritism, we see in the Spirit's book, right? That's where we find the building blocks of Spiritism. Now, the second part of the Spirit's book is the spiritual world. That's when we begin to understand more about how the spiritual world works. And to no surprise, we find that the second book of the Spirit's codification, the basic books of Spiritism, is the medium's book. Right? And then the third part of the Spirit's book, which deals with ethics and moral living, right, and moral laws in general, we find that further developed in the third book of Spiritism, who also had just had a birthday, so to say, a couple of days before that, which is called The Gospel According to Spiritism. And then the fourth book, the cause and consequence one, where we can see the cause and consequences of our actions, we find in Heaven and Hell, which is also a very great book for us to see individual examples of some spirits who have passed over, and they tell us how they feel now, after they've lived their life, and how they would do things differently or not if they were to come back, right? And there's one more book, right? There's the Genesis, which is a book that kind of goes back to the beginning of what we know and re-investigates all the scientific awareness and understanding that we have. Examines like, are there miracles? Are they just laws of nature? And I think that kind of hints at the whole idea of the scientific method that Spiritism has, which is once we go through the whole process, now that we have new knowledge, we'll go back to the beginning and we reevaluate everything that we do and have and continue to learn, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
Let's talk a little bit about the method that Kardec used. And I think that's interesting because sometimes he one of the things he did is he asked the same questions many times in different ways. And sometimes we say, my goodness, but this was already asked, right? And sometimes, even more funny, we see the spirits telling him, we already told you this. So like, what's wrong with you? Why are you asking this again?
I love that part. I love those parts, right? If you have a sense of humor and you understand how it was put together, I get my kicks out of those, right? Because I can almost imagine the good spirits like almost rolling their eyes, right?
Right.
The answers are like, as we have previously told you, right?
Yes.
Like, I know you're testing us. I know that you're asking those questions again. We understand. We're going to repeat it again for you, right? Which I think is the right way of going about things. We got to make sure that we have a solid foundation. So we got to kick the tires on things, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think the methodology is really to prevent.
Apologize for being moving, guys. I pick up this computer at the last minute, and I'm gonna leave for a second because I'm gonna find my charger, and I will be right back. So continue on with the conversation. I'll be right back.
No problem. So I think what's the part, to me at least, it's important to highlight about about Kardec's methodology is that he tries to really prevent or to avoid any comments or any answers that might come as misinterpreted or mistaken by other types of comments. That's why I think he uses, again, my personal opinion, and from what I read and I studied the Spiritist book many times, the Socratic methodology that he used to really go around and try to really find the answer from different angles, from different perspectives. It really highlights the importance of how this book is really, paramount to a lot of people's lives, right? Meaning the information that's available there at our fingertips is really hard-coded based on really a lot of scrutiny that was based on Kardec's methodology that it's not commonly seen these days, unfortunately, right?
Yes, and I think that's one of the things that makes the Spiritist book a great book, but a difficult book to read, right? Let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. It's not the kind of book that you sit down generally in one day and say, I'm going to read the Spiritist book from beginning to end. I mean, the introduction is a killer. It's amazing, right? That's a fantastic piece. But the rest of the book is really made in questions and answers format, right? So it's really an attempt by Kardec to reproduce as perfectly as he can the actual word of the spirits when they were giving an answer, so that we can arrive at those conclusions by ourselves, right? So that we can make up our minds as to what is it that makes sense to us. But that makes it choppy, right? It doesn't have like plot.
Continuity.
So it's hard to read, right? But it's a great reference book.
You know what? One of the things that I have been doing lately, a method that I'm developing, because I see the comment by Glenn Chinaripi, not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly the last name, but he says that Allan Kardec teaches us to study and don't just believe, right? We need to dig deeper for us to understand things. So when I'm given a topic nowadays, so I'll give you an example. I did a lecture on resignation, right? So I took the Spiritist book and I literally looked for every single time in the book that Kardec spoke about resignation. And so you see that the topic is addressed in many different questions. And what's really, really fun to see is the consistency of the answers, So he's going to say like, okay, so resignation is acceptance without complaint, murmur, the word that they used. And then like later in the book, question, do the spirits, the familiar spirits, do they suffer with our struggles? And the answer is no, they don't suffer with your struggles. They suffer with your lack of. And so it kind of you can look through the book and you're gonna find the same topic addressing many different parts, and you're gonna find the consistency you can put together and create a body of knowledge. So I like his comment because I think as you can read the book back, from the beginning to the end, and you're going to have one perspective. But you can also look for particular topics and pull all the answers together, and you're going to see a clear picture, a solid picture of concepts like in front of you. And that has been a very interesting experience for me. I've been really working on putting my lectures together using this system. And then, you can even go to the other books and you're going to see that the same concepts that were placed on the Spirit's book, you're going to find them exactly in the same way, sometimes with a little bit of a nuance, an addition of an idea, but the consistency goes through all the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much that we can unpack from the book, right? In general, it's really a starting point, I think, is where we're getting at, and many other things unfold from it. I think the question that we could ask ourselves and everybody that might be listening too is, are there specific parts of the Spirit's book, maybe a question, maybe something that really stuck to you? And if so, what is it? What is your favorite part of the book, if there is such a thing?
I think you're reading my mind, Dan. I was going to ask, what is people's favorite questions, right, from the Spirit's book, which is sort of the same that you suggested, right?
Yeah, but you just said it nicely because, you're just good with those words. How about you guys? How about we kick started over here? What is there, Flavio, Suzana, what are some of the key parts that really resonates with you guys?
Flavio, start.
So I started with the prolegomena. I think it's a way to understand the book itself. I think without really going deeper and more profound reading into the prolegomena, you won't be able. I don't believe people will be able to really understand the Spirit's book to its fullest. That's my interpretation of it. And I would say one of my favorite questions, probably not the favorite, but one of my favorite questions, right, in the Spirit's book, is the one that talks about what is in different worlds. What about the happiness as we know today? How is that translated to? I think it's question 394, if I'm not mistaken. So, by the way, it's actually the longest question in the Spirit's book. So it goes somewhere along the lines of, in worlds that are more advanced than ours, right? Where, for example, spirits are not really subject to all physical needs and diseases and illnesses that we are. Do they understand happiness in a different way? Or are they more happy? Are they happier than we are here? Because as we know, happiness is a relative term. How do we compare like a less or more happy state between those two worlds? And I love the way Kardec really asks that question, because going back to the Socratic methodology, he goes and tries to really cover every angle. So the spirits have no way, by just giving him the precise answer that really God permits, right? Folks or spirits to be happy and to enjoy which worlds that they live in, per se, depending on their conditions, situations, and of course, less subject to annoyances and even misfortunes. To me, this question really talks about, really resonates that it doesn't matter what conditions we live in our lives, doesn't matter what circumstances we are, there's always an opportunity to be thankful. There's always an opportunity to feel happiness, perhaps not the fullest, right? But there's still a lot of things we need to be grateful and be happy for. And this answer to me hits home for that topic. Since we all live to be happy, this is a question and answer. This is a Q&A pair that we should really have in the back of our minds at all times.
Great. And look, our friend Glenn here, which I guess is our friend Glenn, our Glenn here. Glenn says that his favorite part is that part about right in the beginning, God and God's attributes. Because once you understand God, you can understand a lot of different things, right? So it's a great perspective there too. Just really, really, really great. There's so many things in there. For me, I'll jump in. One of the questions that I like the most, there's many, many, many ones. I think there's a question 132, which I call the meaning of life question. When Kardec basically asked the spirit, so why are we here? What's the purpose of life? And there's sort of a two answers there. One is, hey, you're here to evolve, to grow, to learn, right? Which I think is what we expect. In general, we kind of intrinsically know that we reincarnate because we need to grow in understanding and in practice of love. But the second part that really got me and stuck with me is the spirits continue, and to also play our part in the creation. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just about us learning for ourselves, but for us to also understand that we have a responsibility towards the universe, that as we grow and become wiser and smarter and more enlightened, whatever you want to call, we have to kind of pay forward, that we have to also help the rest of the world and the universe. And that kind of shook me a little bit, because it reminds me to get myself off my selfish little box and know that I have a part to play, and that I should try to help others. So that's one of my favorite ones as well.
Okay. What about you?
Yeah, I have a few. I mean, I like.
Sorry, you only allowed one.
Okay.
We'll go cheating on us now.
Okay, I think question 793, where Kardec asked about what is a complete what is a complete civilization. And I think that the answer is very humbling, because the spirits will say to Kardec, you think that you live in a civilized world, but you only have, he talks about how we are in the first phases of civilization with our intellectual development. But to be fully civilized, we need to have the morality. And then the spirits go on to describe what a civilized world would look like. And so it kind of gives us an idea of how much work we have ahead of us. It kind of, it's humbling. It's humbling. And in line, yes, what are you going to say?
No, is it the one that he talks about? Like a civilized world or a completed civilization is the one that eliminates or has no bearing on vices.
Yeah.
So until you have vices, you cannot call yourselves a completed civilization. Is that question?
Yes. He specifies that we are enlightened but not civilized. I mean, that's exactly the one. So I like this answer. I like this question, and I won't tell you what else I like, because you told me just one question. So
come on, you're allowed to one more. Go ahead, Suzanne. I'm just joking with you.
No, I have another two questions which I can't remember but they had questions about the same thing, and this is what I was saying about how Kardec, how bright he is. So he's going to ask the spirits, what is the highest of all the virtues? And the answer is going to be self-disinterestedness. And like two questions later, which I think is 865, 863 and 865, something like that, he's going to say, okay, we know what all the vices are. Given the ones that we know very well, which one would be like the worst of all, the one that we need to work on? And he says self-interest.
Yep.
So it's two questions. They're like literally two questions away, and it's the same answer, one on the positive and one on the negative. I think that's brilliant. And I think I'm very intrigued by these questions, because it's very, very, and he's going to say that in the realm that we live in, this level of disinterestedness, it's really, really rare. That when we see it happening, we are totally amazed by it, which tells me something, right? So we need to identify our self-interest in our actions. We do things, a lot of times we say that we are being charitable, that we are being loving, but beneath that
beneath that moment when the camera freezes right at the most important and powerful
By self-interest,
moment.
whether we recognize or not, whether we are aware of that or not. But, that's what leads to so much conflict. And so the reason why I like these questions, because I find them extremely, extremely challenging. And they must be very important because Kardec asked twice. And they are like, there's only one question in between the two of them, and it's right there. So I think we should really spend a lot of time reading, trying to understand, to investigate, and thinking how can we take those concepts and practice into our daily lives, because they seem to be absolutely key for our enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm going to pull a comment back here from before from JC. Not because he says he agrees with Dan, because everybody should agree with Dan, but because he brings a point that's really great, right? He says that sometimes the content of the Spirit's book is hard to understand, and that's why we find it important to have group studies and open forums. And I think I heard that a little bit too from what Suzana was saying and what we were talking about here. There's so much in there. There's so much that we can unpack from each one of these questions that is really helpful to have the opportunity to come together and talk to people, right? Different people. It's one of the reasons why we do this show, right? It's because we love hearing different perspectives, and we used to gather after events and just kind of start talking about it. And so it's really great to have this opportunity. And if you have a chance, then do try to find a group of folks that you want to share with. And obviously, we invite you to be part of our podcast, not only this one, our Facebook page. Join us on YouTube. We're doing audio on YouTube. We're going to do video from now on as well. So we want to create this feedback loop where people can bounce their ideas, bounce their understanding, and get different insights. Like, Flavio may interpret something and I never thought about it. Earlier today, Suzana said it's really a work of art, right? And it's different from where I was coming from. And it's just a really, really beautiful thing as we begin to approach here at the end of our time.
Yep. And as we continue developing ourselves, reading, studying, practicing.
We have a few folks here commenting about the questions that they like, Dan.
Oh, there's more comments. That's great.
RJ is saying, question 37. Was the universe created or has it existed from all eternity like God? Ooh. Right? Very physics, things, right? And then Ana Paula is coming in here too, and she's saying that she really likes the questions that talk about the law of progress, what we're talking about, the third part of the Spirit's book. So just really, really, really great different perspectives here. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to comment on all these questions because of time. We want to be mindful of folks' time as well. And then one more, Flavio, one more before we go. I like the part about the intervention of the spirits in the physical world, like what kind of influence they have on us, and vice versa. Our friend Saul from Connecticut chiming in here as well. And there's some wonderful things there, right? But we don't have the time. We should keep the conversation going.
But I guess my one suggestion, one humble suggestion from my end, folks. What if we were talking, or what if somebody here is watching us that doesn't have a lot of knowledge about the Spirit's book? What would we say to these folks to really call out the attention, or maybe inspire them to go read and study and go deeper into the book? Can we give them maybe some small words of wisdom, or maybe some help on really into delving into this journey, which is to really embark on the studies of the Spirit's book? What can we tell them? What can we say to these folks?
Ooh, what can we say about the Spirit's book? I would wholeheartedly say that is an incredible work that was made by really smart people, or spirits, or intelligences, that really address a lot of incredible questions that we have at one point or another in our lives thought of, like, who are we? Why am I here? What's going to happen to me? What should I do? Or more importantly, it's a book that it's almost like a never-ending story. It keeps on giving, right? every time you read it, and I love it. I know it might drive some people nuts, but I love it. Every time that I read it, I find something new in it.
Yep.
So if I had one of those questions like, oh, you're going to go to the desert island, like which book are you going to take, right?
That's the one.
This will be one of them, right? I would take probably the New Testament as well, but this will go in my book, right? In my bag, because it has so much in it.
Dan, yes, this is something that sometimes we see newcomers in Spiritism, or even like people who have been there for a little while, and they say, "Well, I've read this book already," and it's like, okay, try reading again. It's funny because it's like we've been saying, it's so much in it, so much that you read again, and first of all, some things that you have read, they're going to resonate completely different because you were different. So your perspective, how you're going to, going back to the beginning of our conversation, right? We all describe the Spirit's book in a different way because it's how we see with the lens of our experiences, of our, emotions and our psychic. So that's how we see it. So it's just like we're looking at a piece of art, right? So each one of us sees a different aspect of it. But this is true among people, but this is true with yourself. As you read the first time and as you read the second time, it is as if it's two different persons reading the same book. So you will appreciate it with a different perspective. And then you're going to read something and you're going to say, was this here before when I read for the first time? Because I really don't remember seeing it. So you start, like, the more aware you become and the more you study, when you read it again, you see things that you didn't see before. It's incredible. It happens consistently to everyone.
Yeah, I think it's a book that everybody should read. It really gives a logical approach to the understanding why we're here, where we're going to go next, why we're here, right? So
Did you hear me?
I think there's some audio problems here. I'm not sure.
Try it again, Suzana. You chopped up.
Oh, you didn't hear the comment at all?
No, we heard Flavio started talking and then you commented we didn't hear it.
Oh, I don't see him anymore.
Oh, it's probably your internet.
You don't see me anymore?
Yeah, I only see you at this point.
Okay.
Oh, it's a blessing in disguise,
You don't miss you much, Suzana. You know that.
So
I see him still. But I think your point is well taken, and Carol said earlier too, just like as you were commenting too, that is also a great book to read at different stages of your life. That's
exactly it.
And I really like what you said too, Suzanne, about it's, some people say like, oh, I've read it already, right? And yes, you might have read it already, but if you don't keep going back to it, you might lose some of the foundational work that will let you understand other things, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who want to study mediumship and they want to go straight to the medium's book, and that's wonderful, and you can do that if you want. But if you start with the Spirit's book, you have this foundational knowledge that will help you understand everything else. And I also have friends who tell me, my favorite book is The Gospel According to Spiritism, and that's very okay as well, right? But don't do just that one. Go back to the Spirit's book too.
Expand.
Build that knowledge, right? Build that understanding of the world around you so that you can maybe better understand, the gospel, for instance. I personally think I better understand the gospel of Christ because of the Spirit's book, right? So it's really a foundational work that is, it's just really cool and really beautiful in many different ways.
Yeah, I think to me, I've already said that before, it's an amazing book. But the most important piece that I see from the book is every time you read it, you learn new things. But to me, every time you read it, some of the answers that, a lot of folks are asking out there. A lot of people are asking the questions around why we're here, right? How we got here, what we're doing here, where we're heading as a community, right? As spirits that we all are. And this book really talks about all of these things in minute details, in a huge wealth of knowledge that really brings a lot of comforting, a lot of solace to our souls that are in need of something else to understand and to really grasp in order to understand life. Sometimes it really gives purpose to our lives. It really helps us understand, right, the causes of suffering, the trials, experiences, how we develop ourselves. Again, I could go on and on here, but at the end of the day, the bottom line that I'm trying to suggest is it's an amazing book. If you haven't had a chance to read it or study it from cover to cover, right, don't miss out any more time, because there's so much that we all can gain from it.
Which is our segue. We begin to wrap up here our episode today. We're almost running on the hour. So we want to remind folks that the Spirits book can be found online. You can find it on Amazon, Kindle store. You can buy a physical copy. You can find that in many different Spiritist books. You can find it even in PDF format if you really want to do it. So just search for it if you have never come in contact with it, or if you want to read a copy. Of course, if you have trouble finding it too, we'll be glad to help. Chime in on our Facebook page or YouTube comments, and we'll point you to links so you can kind of find it. And don't expect that you need to read it all at once. It takes a lot of time to go through that. But we're very excited about the possibility of talking about this book and celebrating the beginning of something really special that I think all of us agree here with. Spiritism started 166 years ago officially, quote, with the publication of the Spirits book. It has not ended. It continues to evolve and grow, which is really exciting for us and keeps us motivated and dedicated to improving ourselves and others. So as we come upon our hour here, Flavio, Suzana, less thoughts, less words to wrap us up. Flavio, take it away.
So I wanted to thank all of you guys that have been watching us. I think there's a handful of people here watching us. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. Right? Without you guys here, this wouldn't be something that we'll do. We're doing this to really bring some of our experiences, bring some of your comments as well. This is a new avenue for us to try our conversations. And we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you like it, if you don't like it, if you have suggestions, please by all means just give us a holler. Just chime in. We'd love to hear from you. On the book itself, again, an amazing book. Don't waste any more time. Go out there right now, buy your copy and start reading it, because you'll feel very different from when you do that. With that, Suzana, what about you?
All right, Suzana, how about you?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that this was fun. It was nice, although we had a few technical problems. I want to apologize. I know I moved too much for the people who are watching, probably not the most comfortable. Like right now, I don't hear Flavio, but I think it was a great experience. I'm very thankful, and it was very nice to have all of you joining us this evening. Made it really, really nice, and we hope to be back here. But my last words in regards to the topic is really, really to encourage every single person to, like Dan said, have this book nearby. Don't put it away and forget in your bookshelf. Whether you're gonna read from beginning to end, whether you're gonna study with friends, whether you're gonna have as a reference, it's just such a everything. The entire basis of Spiritism is there. God, spirits, reincarnation, the plurality of the worlds, mediumship, the moral laws, and it's just like everything there. So it's very inspiring, and for every single spiritist, we should pretty much, I think, I make it for myself, and I recommend make a go of read the book for the rest of your incarnation, and perhaps even beyond, right? So this is it.
That's right. And so very much
the moral laws, and it's just like everything there.
Indeed. And then much like the Spiritist method in general, where we're always moving forward and we're always growing, we want to thank all of you one more time. for the wonderful time you've spent with us, for your comments. We appreciate it. We hope you continue to join our Spiritist conversation by suggesting new topics, by chiming in on our Facebook page, by joining and following our YouTube channel. And we really are excited to be able to share our thoughts with you and look forward to hearing from you as well. So don't be shy. Let us know what you think works, what doesn't work. And we hope to be doing this more on a regular basis. Thank you for being part of our experiment tonight. And we hope you have a good night. And thank you for listening. From all of us at the Spiritist Conversation.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.